So, if you don't mind, Julie, I will present Julie Garland in French. Donc, Julie Garland est présidente de l'association irlandaise du drone civil. À ce titre, son association a rejoint JEDA et elle est depuis le 7 février présidente, la nouvelle présidente de JEDA ayant pris la succession d'Akim Friedel, donc Akim Friedel qui était allemand, et Julie, donc, qui est irlandaise. Julie Garland est également membre du steering committee de l'ISB de JARUS et elle va nous parler du rôle de JARUS. So, Julie, I leave you the floor for an average of 10 minutes.
Thank you, Philippe. Thank you so much. And I really appreciate being here. I just want to check, are you going to put the presentation that I sent through? Are you going to present it from there? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. So thank you for the very kind invitation. I really appreciate being here. I'm very sorry that I'm not there in person. I would have loved to attend in person, but we have our own drone event here, both tomorrow and Saturday here in Ireland. So I'm very caught up with that. So I am very sorry not to be there with you in person. And also, I'm really looking forward to the 2 years ahead of working with you, Philippe, as the vice chair of JEDA. So thank you for inviting me. I would like to spend just, as you said, just a couple of minutes just explaining JEDA, but also a little bit about JARUS as well, because I think it's important that as national associations, that we're not just looking at what we're doing within our own country, but then looking at it from a larger scale of what we can achieve within Europe, and then on a greater, even on a global scale, what we can achieve through JARUS. And I think where JARUS really becomes important and the input that we have through a national association, through JEDA, into JARUS, is because even though JARUS is a global association or global entity, ultimately, EASA has had the policy of adopting from JARUS pretty much directly into our own, and it ends up in our own national legislation and being governed. So it's important that we have these inputs into JARUS. So JEDA, the Joint European Drone Association, we were founded in 2021, in November 2021. We have 22 associations from 19 member states. And I do have to say that I think part of certainly my mission within JEDA is to try and encourage other associations into the realm. I think we've seen that we have a great strength in numbers, and I think now we should be in a much better position in order to attract new members and new associations from other member states that are currently not part of JEDA. We've in excess of 3,500 members based on those 22 associations, and our seat and our head office is based in Brussels. We're a legal entity in Brussels. And there's a very significant advantage of us actually being a legal entity as the association, because it does allow us to enter partnerships and enter MOUs with other, and also be on the European Transparency Register. We're recognised at the moment by EUCOM, by EASA, by Eurocontrol, the European Defence Agency, CESAR, ICAO and JARUS. And again, this goes back to partly with our affiliation as being an incorporated entity, but I think we can also expand on that recognition as well. One of the pretty immediate quests that I have as well, and it was announced at our General Assembly from EASA, that EASA want to sign a memorandum of understanding of some description ongoing for ongoing interaction with JEDA. Now, I think we need to go back to our national associations and discuss what that will look like, what cooperation we have through JEDA into EASA, and how we as JEDA make sure that we are getting benefit from that association, and that it's not just one way, that it's us giving information to EASA, that we also get a benefit ourselves as an association. I think that's going to be very important moving forward. If you can go on to the next slide. So this is the list. Our board of directors, as I said, we have 22 associations which are made up from 19 member states. So we have Belgium, the Netherlands and Switzerland each have 2 associations involved. This has, up until this year, has been very simple and hasn't been an issue for us. We have one member state at the moment that there may be, as we go on, we may look at the representation on the board of directors and allowing for additional representation as time goes on. At the moment, there is one member from each individual state is only entitled to sit on the board of directors. So if you can go on to the next slide, please. So the executive committee at the moment is the president is myself, vice president, as you know, Felipe and Vidmantas. We have Laurent as the treasurer, and then we have Stefan as the secretary. And then we're all elected until February 2026. And then it's under discussion for a slight change in the statute in order to give an honorary role to Akim, who is the founding president of JEDA. And we can go on to the next slide. So the competence groups that we have within JEDA, at the moment we have 3 competence groups. Competence groups 1 is looking at the European regulations and the implementation of those regulations within member states. We have found there's a little bit of crossover between competence group 1 and competence group 3, and where competence group 3 is looking at technical issues, mainly around manufacturing and certification, but where we have means of compliance that require commenting on, there may be an overlap somewhat between competence group 1 and competence group 3, but I think the delineation at the moment is quite clear. And then we have competence group 2, which is looking at training. We're looking at the program of training, organizations, what training organizations should look like, what the syllabus for the different levels within the training programs that are set out in both the open and specific category. We're focusing on the specific category at the moment. And we're also looking at the competence groups that have been established within IASA and our participation, making sure that we are actively participating on those and not duplicating what we're doing within our competence groups, that we're very engaged with any other groups that are out there. And I talk about this a little bit later, maybe with some of the associations that we have with other particularly standards bodies. And I think it's important that we have a feed into the standards bodies, because otherwise standards are being decided without our input as operators and as pilots. So I think we've got a real opportunity through national associations and through JEDA and having an input into the standards bodies that we can really enhance what we're doing within our competence groups. And again, I feel that should be two-way. The standards bodies looking to JEDA, but JEDA looking to the standards bodies as well.
Julie, if I may, concerning the competence group, for all people participating to our General Assembly, I think it is important to say that these competence groups are not restricted to only a member of the BOD of JEDA, but are open to all experts of our national association.
Yeah, that's a very important point, because if we're not limiting this to the board of directors, anybody in a national association who wishes to participate in the competence groups, and I think it's so important that we get that expertise from operators and from pilots into the competence groups, and it is no way restricted. Yes, we require them to be a member of the national association, because the national association should be putting them forward as a member of their competence groups. But absolutely, Philip, it should be. It's open to the national associations to make sure that we get the broadest possible level of competence within the competence groups. Went slightly. So just to talk maybe a little bit about JARUS and our input into JARUS. So we've been. I was nominated to JARUS as the JEDA representative, along with Filippo Tomasello. And this was back in just shortly after it was at the start of 2022. Both Filippo and myself are members of the steering committee. And then following a vote, I was voted as the vice chair of the JARUS Industry Stakeholders Body Steering Committee. And maybe to say a little bit about JARUS, because a lot of people are very familiar with it, but some may not be quite as familiar. So I'll just give just a couple of sentences. JARUS has been around for a long time and has been formative in the regulation and the regulatory structure that we currently have in Europe. JARUS, by its nature, is the joint authorities on rulemaking for unmanned systems. So it starts off with joint authorities. So it is made up of regulators, and regulators are predominantly, about 70% of JARUS is formed through regulators. So it's critically important to the formation and to the ongoing success of JARUS that it is joint authorities, that it is aviation regulators coming together to meet on a regular basis and form the new regulatory environment that we are all going to live with in the years to come. What's the most positive aspect of JARUS is the remaining 30%, which is made up of industry. So approximately 70% is regulators and 30% is industry experts coming together to advise the regulators. And this has always been the critical juncture within JARUS as to that balance between regulators. If it was the other way around, if it was 70% industry and 30% regulators, the industry, the regulators would feel that the industry were dictating to the regulators how the regulation will live in the future. Whereas at the moment, with the balance that's there, it means that the regulators are very much on board with the outputs, and that can be seen when EASA automatically adopt what is the output is from JARUS because of two reasons. One, it has been formed through a regulatory process and through regulators from across the globe in consensus. And the second is that it goes to an external consultation process through the JARUS methodology before it gets adopted into EASA. And at that point of public consultation, everybody has an opportunity to actually comment on those documents before they're adopted. So it has worked well. I will see how the future of JARUS is. There are some issues around the future of JARUS with regards to EASA participation, with regards to the FAA participation, and also with Transport Canada that I think as JEDA will have an opportunity to address. And I think also as national associations going forward, we'll have an opportunity to put some pressure on EASA to maintain their membership of JARUS moving forward. We've various work groups within, there's four main work groups within JARUS, there's safety risk management, airworthiness, ops organisation and personnel. And we've got representatives sitting on those work groups. But again, that's not confined to just JEDA members. Anybody from national organisations can also volunteer and come on board to the industry, to the ISB, to the industry stakeholders body. And then when there's a call for experts, they get put onto one of the working groups as required. If you can go on to the next slide. Just a brief word on SORA 2.5. SORA 2.5 is looking at the Annex H, went out for consultation yesterday. That's open to public consultation, so that is available to you. The public consultation on the remainder of SORA 2.5 is complete and finalised, and the comment response has taken place. It's Kazakhstan in May. It will be voted on for release. So it does look like by the end of May that we will have SORA 2.5 published. EASA is already working towards implementing and, if you like, EASA-fying the SORA 2.5 so that it fits into the framework of regulation that exists within Europe. So there won't be a public consultation before adoption into as an acceptable means of compliance into the EASA regulations. Authorizations that have been issued under SORA 2.0 won't necessarily have to be immediately applied for. There will be significant transition periods, and SORA 2.0 will remain valid for the time being, but there may be a point where there's no additional SORA 2.0 applications allowed. And if you can go on to the final slide, please. There might be a couple of clicks on this, thanks. Sorry, I took this from, it's actually from an EASA conference, and the EASA input into the General Assembly. And I don't know, this is certainly an issue in Ireland. It's an issue with multiple operators that we've dealt with across various different member states. And the issue around PDRAs, predefined risk assessment, is that they are not being widely adopted at all in member states. They were designed as what should be a simple process, but the reality of trying to apply predefined risk assessments hasn't been the same for operators. There's an operations manual required, and once you have to produce an operations manual, it's often as easy to just produce a SORA risk assessment. So the standard scenarios may become slightly more popular now, making the declaratory process under standard scenarios, which the PDRA SO1 and SO2 were designed to replace. There is, though, EASA have very significant work on the SAIL 2 operations manual, which they published, and that's going to be updated to what are called PDMs, which are predefined manuals, and they're going to be published. EASA are hoping over the next few weeks that the PDM for PDRA SO1 will be published, and it will be available then to member states to if they wish to adopt that into their local specific requirements. So there is some real movement within EASA towards trying to standardize some of the documentation and trying to make the application process easier. But I think we all individually across member states, and particularly under the umbrella of JEDA, have very significant issues around the application times, the application processes, the complexity that we enter into once we enter into the specific category. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you having invited me. And if anybody has any questions, I'm more than happy. I hope I didn't speak too quickly. So my apologies for not speaking French as well.
Thanks, Julie. So I wanted to ask Anne-Marie if she has any question, but I see that she has a question. So Anne-Marie.
Yes, thank you, Julie, so much for your intervention, and congrats for your new post as president. Can you describe the different working groups like ICAO, EASA, CEN, or ISO groups, SHRAG, and so on, where JEDA is involved, apart from JARUS, because you already said that? It is possible to find an infographic on your website, for example, showing this presence. I currently ask you this data because it's very interesting for understanding the influence that JEDA can have in Europe, for example.
Yes, certainly. So I actually have a slide from our General Assembly. I will need to get it, and I can send it on to you, of each of the groups. I do think there's been some of the groups that we're involved in. We're looking at EuroK, we're looking at Euro SCG, we're looking at there's about 8 that we have at this moment in time, and I'll send on the full list of the 8. I'll send them on I'll communicate with Felipe later on, but I'll send those to you, absolutely. And the other thing is we are looking for volunteers as well to step forward, because we cannot necessarily take this from the board of directors. There's only 22 people on the board of directors, and we're all people who are involved. I mean, I have really significant input into JARUS as well as within JEDA. And so we need people to be involved and to feed back into JEDA what's going on with the individual work groups. The other thing is making sure that we're recognized by each of these and that we're involved. And I know even just recently with EuroK that we can get involved in EuroK as a commenter. So it means that we have the documentation in advance as well, rather than having to wait until it's in the public realm. So we're making significant progress, but I will send you the list, what we're involved in, who the representatives are within those. Some of them are changing over, and also what our future plans are too.
Great, thank you so much. We tried to do a global map of all the representation to, I'm sorry, I'm a bit sick. My voice is awful. We're just trying to do a map of our representation in the work groups. And I will send you back the drawing after I finish that.
Yeah. That would be really super, because I think it's really important. We are quite European centric in JEDA, and I think that's probably good, aside from JARUS. But at the same time, I think at ICAO level and at different level, we can also really have an impact and a significant input as well. So I think it's really important that we're not just looking at Europe, that we're looking at what's happening globally, because that will always have an impact on what's happening in Europe. So yeah, happy to continue the conversation on that in whatever way we can as well, and take suggestions from you if there's other associations that you feel that JEDA should be involved in. you know, we're happy to get involved. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne-Marie. Thanks very much, Julie, giving your time. Again, congratulations for our new president. Long life to JEDA, and I wish you a nice event today and tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you so much, and enjoy your event this afternoon as well. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Bye.